and the southeast. Kent seeing a fair amount of cloud moving in. But for the north and northwest of Scotland, the cloud actually thins and it turns brighter into the afternoon and warmer as a result. Northeast Scotland, low to mid-20s, further south in places as well. And it's another fine start to Wednesday. The best of the sunshine on Wednesday morning will be in the far north and west, whilst central and eastern England sees quite a lot of cloud during the morning. That disappears back to the coast during the afternoon, leading to another warm and fine day for many. Thursday's very similar, but on Friday, some showers will return. Bye-bye.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good evening, I'm Johnny Ratner. Major problems continue in Oxfordshire for the M40 this evening. The motorway remains closed southbound the junction 10, the Brackley exit. A lorry drove into the central reservation where recovery work is still taking place, and it's down to a single lane directly opposite for recovery work. It's taking at least an hour to get through those queues both ways. On the Hertfordshire stretch of the M25, one lane shut clockwise just before the A1M. A lorry's broken down in the roadworks, causing extra congestion. And in Essex, between Thaden Boys and Waltham Abbey, Woodridden Hill shut just off the Wakeham's roundabout following an accident with queues back to the M25. In Gloucestershire, west of Tetbury, the A4135 shut between the Babdown Airfield and the A46 following an accident, and trains are suspended between Cowstock and Gunners Lake due to emergency engineering work. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
This is your channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss My Big Opinion, Mark Meets, and My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
A very good evening to you. I'm Martin Daubney and this is GBN Tonight. On tonight's show, today the Prime Minister met with his Italian counterpart Giorgia Meloni in Rome to discuss ways of tackling irregular migration, illegal migration to me and you. Can he learn some valuable lessons from the Italians? And next story, the 45th President of the United States, Donald Trump, has escaped his second assassination attempt in as many months. Who is to blame and how does America move forward? And Israel was blamed for the October the 7th attacks at a fringe event at the Liberal Democrat Party conference. Does Ed Davey, the party leader, now need to take action? So we've got an action-packed show. Sir Keir Starmer is on his charm offensive. He's been to Germany, he's been to France. Now he's in Italy. Will any of it rub off when an Italian job turn up on our shores? Or will once again Sir Keir Starmer bottle it? All of that to come. So get in touch with your thoughts on tonight's topics by going to gbnews.com/your say. But first, here's your news headlines with Sophia Wensler.
Martin, thank you. Good evening from the GB newsroom. It's just gone 7 o'clock. These are your headlines. Junior doctors have voted to accept a government pay rise deal. That's according to the British Medical Association. The new deal will see the profession get a 22.3% pay rise over 2 years, an offer that the BMA recommended members to accept. And we'll bring you more as we get it. Now in other news, disgraced BBC presenter Hugh Edwards has been spared jail after admitting to accessing indecent images of children, but the judge said his long-earned reputation is in tatters. It comes after the 63-year-old was sent 41 illegal images by convicted paedophile Alex Williams over WhatsApp. The court also heard Edwards paid Williams hundreds of pounds after receiving the images. At Westminster Magistrates Court this afternoon, Edwards was handed a 6 months imprisonment suspended sentence for 2 years. It means he doesn't go to prison but is subject to a probation period. Now, the Prime Minister has reaffirmed his commitment to cracking down on smuggling gangs after high-level talks in Rome. Sir Keir Starmer met with Italian leader Giorgia Meloni to discuss what he called Italy's remarkable progress in halting Mediterranean boat crossings. It comes after Italy's recent controversial deal with Albania to handle asylum claims. In a joint press conference, both leaders underscored their commitment to supporting Ukraine and pledged to work together to fight human trafficking.
The challenge of irregular migration. This is a problem across Europe, for both of our countries in particular, but across Europe. As Director of Public Prosecutions in Britain some years ago, I saw the important work that can be done across borders on issues like counter-terrorism. And I've never accepted, as we discussed, that we can't do the same with smuggling gangs. And now, of course, Italy has shown that we can. You've made remarkable progress working with countries along migration routes as equals to address the drivers of migration at source and to tackle the gangs. And
in the US, a suspected gunman in an apparent assassination attempt of former US President Donald Trump has appeared before a court in Florida. Ryan Routh is charged with federal gun crimes, possession of a firearm by a convicted felon, and possession of a firearm with an obstructed serial number. Reports suggest a Secret Service agent saw the barrel of a rifle sticking out from the bushes on the perimeter of Trump's international golf course in West Palm Beach. According to phone records, Routh was in the wooded area near Trump's golf course for about 12 hours. Trump, who is unharmed, has posted on social media saying it was certainly an interesting day. Those are the latest GB News headlines. More in an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Sophia. Now we've got an action-packed menu. Let's get tucking in. Top story tonight, Prime Minister Keir Starmer has been meeting with his Italian counterpart, Giorgia Meloni, today in Rome. The Prime Minister layered praise on the Italian government's strict approach to migration.
The challenge of irregular migration. This is a problem across Europe. You've made remarkable progress working with countries along migration routes as equals to address the drivers of migration at source and to tackle the gangs. And as a result, irregular arrivals to Italy by sea are down 60% since 2022. So I'm pleased that we're deepening our cooperation here.
Showering praise on Ms Meloni. They all thought she was far right. Anyway, Italy has been pursuing a tough approach to illegal migration, involving turning boats back and agreeing to an offshore processing agreement, of course, with Albania. So what can our Prime Minister learn from Italy's approach to illegal migration? Well, to discuss this, I'm pleased to be joined by the former Director General of the UK Border Force, Tony Smith. Tony, welcome to the show. Always an absolute delight. Here's my problem with Sir Keir Starmer going to Italy. He's already been to Germany. They closed their borders and they decided to nick the Rwanda deal. France, we pay them £500 million every year. We don't seem to get much out of that. And the point with Italy, Tony, is that they actually turn boats back. They gave €100 million to Tunisia, the same to Libya, and they've got a 60% reduction in their illegals arriving because they actually tow boats back to Africa. I put it to you, Sir Keir Starmer has no appetite to do anything similar with the country where most of our illegals come from, that is France. Prove me wrong.
I'm not going to prove you wrong, Martin. You're absolutely spot on. Well done. That is why the 64% actually this year reduction across the Central Med route is precisely been delivered. It's because the Italians, Meloni and also Ursula von der Leyen went to negotiate new deals in the North Africa coastline, and they are turning boats back there. They've invested in the coast guards, both off of Italy and, both off of Libya and Tunisia. A lot of money's gone in there. And so essentially, yes, there's a different policy, isn't there, in terms of EU maritime interdiction on their southern border on the Mediterranean to the one that we're seeing closer to home on the English Channel, where we know the French policy is quite different, isn't it? They're not prepared to take boats back. They're not even prepared to rescue them unless they're in really dire straits, rather to escort them to the UK. So I do think we need to call the EU out on this and say, what is the difference? If we're into the business of saving lives, then should we not be doing the same thing on our English Channel and intercepting boats and bringing them back to France, which is a safe place? And that is a fundamental of British law and of international maritime law, rather. So I really do think that you're onto something with this. And I think we do need to say, well, why is it okay in the Mediterranean, but it's not okay in the English Channel?
And the next key point, Tony, is that if we solve illegal migration from the African subcontinent to Italy, it won't make a toot-cahoot difference of what makes it to our shores, because the simple matter is, when you look at the nationalities who end up on our shores from France, it's the Afghans, they're the number one. It's the Iranians, it's the Turks, it's the Iraqis. They come from the porous land border to the east. They're not coming over the sea. It's a very different route. And Tony, what about putting this on top? Germany has just decided to close all 3,400 miles of its borders. So what happens to those people that come from Turkey that can't get into Germany? I put it to you, they're going to start coming to Calais. Next destination, Britain.
Well, there are a very significant number of migrants already in the EU, Martin. I think about 900,000 still waiting for a first decision on an asylum claim. A number have been given a notice to quit. They're still in the EU. They're still going to want to come to the UK. The smuggling lines are still very much there. The business model is still very much there. As you and I have discussed before, the only way to actually remove the incentives across the channel is to get back into removing people. We need to send people somewhere. So I had to smile when I saw this arrangement with Albania, because actually I think they picked that up from our idea that we had with Rwanda. And, I am an advocate of the Rwanda plan. I think that was shut down far too early. If offshoring is the answer, we went a very, very long way down that route. And when this government was elected, the first thing they did, almost before they were elected, was to say, well, we're going to shut that down. It just seems to me rather odd that we're now going to Italy to look at a proposed, because it's not running yet, Martin, but a proposed plan, which would be a similar kind of arrangement for offshoring with Italy. Slightly different, I accept, because they are saying, if your application fails, you will get in, whereas Rwanda, you would have stayed there anyway, whether or not you qualified for asylum. So it's slightly different. But I do think the Rwanda model was probably the better one of the two. And I'm rather disappointed that they were so hasty in closing that down, personally.
OK, excellent stuff. Always an absolute delight to share your expertise on the show. That's Tony Smith, the former Director General of UK Border Force. Always a pleasure, Tony. Thank you very much. Now let's cut back to the studio, where I'm delighted to say I'm joined by my panel. And that's GB News' senior political commentator, Nigel Nelson, and Aman Bogle, the chairman of the Global Britain Centre. Gentlemen, welcome to the show. Let's start with you, Nigel, because we know you're a bit of a lefty. Let's start with you. Do you think, I think we've established that there won't be any chance this side of a cold day in hell of Sir Keir Starmer agreeing to tow boats back to France, as Meloni is doing with boats that depart from Tunisia or Libya? But could there be a deal where Britain adopts the Albanian scheme with Italy, where our asylum seekers, illegals, whatever, are processed offshore in Albania? Not Rwanda, but Albania. Could that happen?
Yes. And that's one of the reasons that Keir Starmer went to Italy, to actually have a look at that scheme. The way that it works, it is very different from Rwanda. Yeah. So the way it works is that it's a processing method. So only people who come from safe countries will go there. No kids, no sort of young families or anything like that. They will go to Albania, 2 centres there, and Italian workers will actually process them. The Albanians won't. They provide the security, the premises, that kind of thing. If they're granted asylum, they go back to Italy. Completely different from Rwanda, where even if you got refugee status in Rwanda, you'd have ended up having to stay there. So the system is a lot better. It's not ideal. That you mentioned about how Maloney deals with Tunisia and Libya. The detention camps in Libya are pretty awful because by stopping the boats coming across, the people who would have gone in them...
But they're fleeing war zones. They're in fear of their lives. What's a detention centre in a desert? Well, in Libya, pretty awful. Tunisia, a different case. British holidaymakers go there all the time. I mean, Tunisia is a safe country, and so she pays a load of money to try and deter people leaving those countries for Italy.
Aman Boga, let's turn to you. Do you think that would be an acceptable compromise, the offshore processing in Albania of British illegals? And do you think that's a potential ever going to happen under Keir Starmer?
Never. Well, the simple thing is you cannot trust a word that comes out of Sir Keir Starmer's mouth, because simply the fact is, look, he came out against the Rwanda plan on day one. He scrapped it on day one. We have a Home Secretary who has stood there with a placard saying refugees welcome. Now, we all know that these people are not genuine refugees. Number three, well, what's more meaningful is, well, the UK is already the second biggest spender of foreign aid in helping those in need at source. There is no reason why the UK should be the world's refugee camp.
OK, and the bigger issue I mentioned a moment ago there, Nigel, was if we are seeing other tough action in Italy, Germany, closing all their land borders, if people can't get into those countries, well, it makes sense that like a tuba chupes, they're going to be funneled towards Calais. Well, it could get a lot worse before it gets any better.
Certainly they have to go somewhere. But, I mean, bear in mind what the draw factor is for Britain, which is not... I mean, the refugees are all over the place. Most refugees are in their neighbouring country anyway. But they come here because they speak English, so they think that they might be able to get work once they get this end, or they've got relatives or friends in this country. So it is unlikely that somebody who doesn't have those various things will make their way to Calais.
Do you think, I mean, the number one destination for illegal immigrants across the 27 member states is Germany. But like 2.2 million in the past 9 years. They've had a terrible, terrible problem with just the crime rates and also Islamist terrorism. So now they are basically going full Farage. They're closing their borders. This is Germany. Indeed. You know, the spiritual leader of the European Union. Even they've realised we need firm action.
It was Germany who welcomed in 2 million Syrians 10 years ago, and to their detriment. And as you say, they've gone full circle. But I think that's what we need in this country. We need a full, complete emergency brake on all immigration, be it illegal or legal. We have 9.4 million of our own people who are economically inactive at the minute. And let's be honest, we have no idea who these people are who are coming into our borders illegally. But more importantly, looking back at what Starmer thinks he's going to do, well, the clue's in the terminology that his regime has brought in, which is not calling it illegal, calling it irregular immigration.
But it's not illegal to cross the channel. That's the point.
Well, it is.
No, it's not.
We have a border.
No, it's not.
We have a border.
It's not that under the Refugee Convention.
Well, that Refugee Convention is no longer valid. That was built up in the 50s.
It is valid because this country is still a signatory to it.
And that's why we must leave the ECHR.
So crossing the channel is not illegal. You could become an illegal migrant having crossed the channel if either you don't claim asylum or your asylum application is turned down.
I would argue that it's quite ludicrous that you have tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people taking advantage of that situation, crossing the border from France to our borders, who are clearly not fleeing war zones or conflict zones I mean, look, let's be honest, there are nearly 1 billion self-acclaimed refugees across the world. Where do we draw the line? Do we accept them all in?
Well, Germany, Nigel, is drawing the line by saying if anybody illegally in their destination now, if you arrive without paperwork, without proof of ID, without a passport, if you arrive at the German border from any of the surrounding nations without the paperwork, you're deemed illegal. That's what they do in Hungary, by the way. And if you don't have your paperwork, you're not in, you're classified as an illegal. Surely we could do the same here. If you arrive at Calais without a passport, you're illegal. Clear off home.
Again, we do. So you would face, if you come in without paperwork, papers, you can face up to 4 years jail.
Well, that never happens.
It doesn't happen, but asylum trumps that. So if you come in and claim asylum, until that application is turned down, that you can stay here. That actually applies across the world because, again, we're back to the Refugee Convention.
And final word to you, sir.
And that's where we need a huge reform of the great blob that is the Home Office. With 74% of people being granted asylum, well, we need to have a great further look at the people granting them that asylum. I mean, I know for personal examples, very much so, that a number of people I know have claimed asylum, have got it, but they're not genuine refugees.
There we go. Maybe it's time for firm action. Nigel, Ammon, thank you very much. A great start to the show. Nice and lively. Thanks to my panel. Well, last night, for the second time in only 2 months, Donald Trump has faced another suspected assassination attempt on his life. More on that after the break.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
I've got a question for you here, Mr. Motivator. Each time I will try and do a Couch to 5K, and I start, and then it stops, and then I'll have another go. It's baby steps, though, for most of us, isn't it? You've got to start slow, because I also see people go out and run, do that, and then do too much, and they get completely exhausted and think, I can't do this anymore. So what is it? You have to start slowly, right? Is that fair?
Well, with everything that you do need to start slowly. But what's more important than that? You need to identify an activity that suits you. Now, the thing is, you may want to do Couch to 5K, but let's say you have a preponderance for swimming. Maybe swimming is what you really like, or dancing is what you like. You find the activity that suits you. And I have to say, you'll never see a happy jogger. They're happy afterwards. They have enjoyed the experience, but they're never happy whilst doing it. But you must start with everything.
Have you ever been out of shape, though? Because whilst I find you really inspiring, I feel as though you've always been in good nick, and therefore it's kind of come easy to you. Whereas I think, you know, there are plenty of people who have a tendency to put on weight. I mean, I can look at chocolate and I feel like I put on weight. You know, and it's a slog, especially if you've taken your foot off the gas for a while. Getting back into it's brutal. What do you know about that?
Well, let me just say this to you, that in the early days, and I can go back, don't forget 71 years, our activity level was much higher. But this is something that's really just happened in the last 30 years. So in those 30 years, we have changed. We now spend more time in front of the computer. We spend more time sitting down. So that's why we need gyms and we need to get up. Now, gyms don't suit everybody. And that's why I do free classes. Free club, you can join. Everyone can get access to movement in their home. But you have got to make that first step.
GB News, the People's Channel. Weekdays on GB News. Wake up to breakfast every day from 6 a.m. Followed by Britain's newsroom at 9:30. At noon, it's Good Afternoon Britain. Followed by Martin Daubney from 3 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to GBN Tonight with me, Martin Daubney, 7:20. Now, the suspected gunman in the apparent assassination attempt of former US President Donald Trump has appeared before a court in Florida. 58-year-old Ryan Wesley Routh is charged with federal gun crimes, possession of a firearm by a convicted felon, and also possession of a firearm with an obstructed serial number. The former president was playing golf when a man was discovered pointing an assault rifle into the course in Donald Trump's direction. Now, this comes just 2 months, of course, after he was shot at a campaign rally in Pennsylvania. The apparent second attempt in 2 months on Donald Trump's life has led to serious questions about the safety of US presidential candidates. Despite being just millimetres from death in July, it was revealed last night that Mr. Trump does not receive full protection from the Secret Service. Well, there's loads to unpack there. And joining me live from the United States is Eric Prince, a businessman and thought leader on military reform. He founded Blackwater Worldwide, a private military corporation, after serving as a US Navy SEAL. Wow, what a guy. His podcast is called Off the Leash with Eric Prince, and I'm delighted to say Eric joins me now. Eric, what a man you are. Now then, I'm assuming that you would have a few choice comments on the security, for starters, around Donald Trump. How on earth can a presidential candidate go and play golf and we find out this guy's been camped out in the woods with a gun for 12 hours waiting for his man?
He was camped out. How did he have any idea? Because Trump golfing was not on any public schedule. How did he know to set up on the golf course that day? He was clearly trophy hunting. He had put 2 ballistic plates against the fence, mounted them, and he mounted a GoPro. Why? Because he wanted to film himself assassinating Donald Trump. He wanted to be a hero of the left. It is disgusting. The vitriolic language demonizing him like Hitler has activated every crazy left-wing nut job to try to take a shot at him. And the one thing I have to correct, Donald Trump wasn't just shot at in Butler, Pennsylvania. He was hit. It bloodied his ear, and he was about 1.5 inches from having his life taken. I mean, it was is extremely close. There, you can see the picture. GoPro in the top left, 2 ballistic plates, rifle prop there, ready to fire. From a point where I think he was set up, it was about 150, maybe a 200-yard shot. Very, very well within effective range of that rifle with the scope.
Yeah, so that rifle there, Eric Prince, it was fitted with the scope. So you're saying that shot to a relatively decent marksman would have been pretty straightforward. I want to go back to a point there, Eric, an excellent point you made about the frenzy that's been whipped up around Donald Trump for years now, best part of 9 years, from way back in 2015 on the run-up to the first presidential election. And today, Donald Trump has spoken out, and he says he blames the rhetoric of people like Kamala Harris and the highly inflammatory language that surrounded his political career. Do you think that's a fair point? This demonization of Donald Trump, as you say, is radicalizing people to the point where they think it's a good idea to pull a trigger on him.
The apocalyptic language, if Donald Trump is president again, then democracy ends, and all steps must be taken to prevent that, all steps. Even some have said he must be eliminated. It's ridiculous. These words clearly have consequences. It's activated these people on the periphery to say, I'm going to make my life relevant by killing Donald Trump. And I guess it's not going to stop until they actually suffer consequences for that, whether they are dragged into court or if something happens to Trump again, the consequences in American society will be apocalyptic. That's, I'm afraid, I'm sure of.
So, Eric Prince, what needs to be done? I mean, Joe Biden today was saying that the Secret Service should be fully available to Donald Trump to try and protect him. But this is twice now. Twice is more than a mere coincidence. Do you think there could be another attempt? And what would you do as a security expert to put a ring of steel around Donald Trump?
Well, look, the last time Trump, when they took a shot at him in Pennsylvania, there was 4 times as many Secret Service agents assigned to Joe Biden's wife about an hour away in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, than there were assigned to Donald Trump. She has no constitutional role at all. What they need to do is obviously increase the quality and the quantity of the Secret Service agents around him, especially on the advance team. You have to come at this with a predator's view. If you come at it with just a law enforcement defensive view, they're always looking for evidence, looking backwards. You have to say, look at the 10 ways I'm going to kill Donald Trump, and plug every one of those holes. And so whether that's seconding people from the special operations community, from SEAL Team 6 or from Delta, there's lots of ways to do that. But the problem is, like every other federal agency in America, the bureaucracy has gotten so large, the unaccountability has gone for so long that you have a large blob of an organization where you have maybe 5%, 10% of the people try to do a great job carrying all the water, and the other 90% are largely useless. And until you debride that wound, you have a festering problem. And that is, they're 0 for 2, but for heaven's sakes, how many more is it going to take? Because we have a true constitutional crisis if the leading candidate for president, who's likely going to win, has been targeted not once, but twice. That has never happened in American history, not in 247, 48 years.
And Eric, could I quickly ask you, shots were fired towards this would-be assailant, Ryan Routh. He escaped, he got in his vehicle. Eric Prince, if you'd have been on the security detail, what would have happened to him?
Well, there's 4 shots fired. I'm sorry they were not effective rounds, but I'm really grateful to local law enforcement that they actually caught him. They got a picture. They pushed immediately to the license plate readers, immediately to a helicopter, and they caught the guy. Great job on local law enforcement. I implored Governor DeSantis of Florida to seize control of the investigation because that's how bad our federal government is at actually closing the loop on these. They've memory holed Butler, Pennsylvania, all the details. How did this guy get explosives, all the rest, that actually took a shot at Trump and wounded him. It's time for the states to do a much better job and displace the federal government, who is clearly incapable of doing that job.
Okay, Eric Prince, absolutely fascinating. Thank you so much for your time there. The founder of Blackwater Worldwide, a private military corporation. Excellent guest. Thank you very, very much. Now, quickly, let's return to our studio and knock some ideas around with my panel. Sorry, gents, I took so long with him, but what a fascinating fella. Nigel Nelson and Aman Bogle. Let's start with you, Aman. What do you think? I mean, twice is more than a coincidence. Surely it could happen again.
Absolutely. I think 3 quick points to make. First of all, look, this is democratic backsliding in the world's most happening democracy for so long. The fact that they cannot protect the former president and the expected president in such a serious way. Number 2, I would say that, as our guest said, this is serious from the Marxists in the White House, Kamala Harris, the radicalizing language that she has used against President Trump. And number 3, so for example, I was in India with a couple of British journalists in May for the Indian general election. And there were our nomination rally for Prime Minister Modi. 100,000 people there, not a single untoward incident and not a single arrest. Now, if they can organise security for the world's greatest democracy in India, what's stopping the United States from doing so?
Well, what is the answer to that, Nigel Nelson? Why do these things keep seeming to happen to Donald Trump, and they could well happen again? And back to that point, is the rhetoric of Kamala Harris, the American media, contributory towards this?
I don't think it's Kamala Harris is rhetoric, but there is rhetoric around which has contributed. And the biggest danger now is copycat attacks, obviously. So I think that Eric was absolutely right about that. It would encourage other people to take a punt at Trump as well. The answer, obviously, is, and it seems fairly obvious, he should have total Secret Service protection.
Yeah, and it seems extraordinary that this guy knew he was going to be playing golf at that
They need
course,
to find out how that could have happened.
At that time, he was camped out for 12 hours, undetected. This is one of Donald Trump's own private golf clubs. This fella's camping with a machine gun and body armour and a scope and a camera to film it all for 12 hours. Many questions need to be asked, gents, and I think we have to leave that one there. Brilliant debate. Thank you very much to my panel. Now, coming up next, our political editor Chris Hope sat down with the leader of the Liberal Democrats. But before he doze off, he was asked if he wants to reverse Brexit. You will not want to miss his answer next. There's Ed Davey coming in on a jet ski.
Hi there, welcome to the latest forecast from the Met Office for GB News. It was missing throughout much of the summer, but higher pressure has now arrived. There will be some cloud in places, but for most it's clear spells through the night and during the next few days. Under this higher pressure that centred over the UK, that's pushed a cold front south. But another weak front will move into the far northwest overnight. That's going to bring some thicker and lower clouds, so fairly murky and damp in places. Lewis Harris sky, as well as Shetland, seeing some light and patchy outbreaks of rain. Elsewhere, clear skies. Under those clear skies, temperatures falling 2 to 4 Celsius in some sheltered spots across central and southern UK. A few mist and fog patches first thing. They're not going to last soon enough. Clear skies and sunshine return across the UK. That is, except for the Northern Isles and the far north and northwest of Scotland, where it will be a grey, misty and damp start in places. Best of the sunshine across Scotland. We'd be through the central belt, eastern Scotland and Northern Ireland seeing some decent sunny spells. But for much of southern Scotland, England and Wales, it's blue skies from the word go, and that's how it remains effectively throughout much of the day. Some patchy cloud, most likely across East Anglia and the southeast. Kent seeing a fair amount of cloud moving in. But for the north and northwest of Scotland, the cloud actually thins and it turns brighter into the afternoon and warmer as a result. Northeast Scotland, low to mid-20s, further south in places as well. And it's another fine start to Wednesday. The best of the sunshine on Wednesday morning will be in the far north and west, whilst central and eastern England sees quite a lot of cloud during the morning. That disappears back to the coast during the afternoon, leading to another warm and fine day for many. Thursday's very similar, but on Friday, some showers will return. Bye-bye.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there short and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to GBN Tonight with me, Martin Daubry. Now then, conference season is finally upon us, and this weekend has seen the Liberal Democrats in Brighton, of course, with its leader, Sir Ed Davey, arriving on a jet ski. There he is. He loves a bit of water sports, as he said. Now, if you recall, under Davey's leadership, the party has returned to being the third largest political force in the United Kingdom. The party now, of course, boasts 72 MPs, the best result in the party's history. And our political editor, Chris Hope, spoke with Sir Ed Davey earlier today, where the Liberal Democrat leader reaffirmed the Lib Dem's position of rejoining the single market and a fully inclusive youth mobility scheme.
Is Sir Keir Starmer wrong to rule out joining the single market or customs union as part of it as he attempts to get a closer deal with Europe?
Well, we've said the government needs to be more optimistic, and that should include the long-term objective of getting back in the single market. Because what we've got to do with our relationship with our European neighbours and friends is rebuild that trust. It was completely broken and shattered by the Conservatives. It'll take some time, but you have to have the objective of getting back into the single market. The UK has a youth mobility scheme with Japan, with South Korea, with Australia.
That's under 30s.
With Canada, under 30s. But it appears that the government's ruled out having one of those with Europe, even though that's been a proposal from the other side. I think that's a mistake. I want our young people in our country to have the freedom to work, to travel, to study across Europe. And I think we would welcome young Europeans here.
Well, quelle surprise. You take off the wetsuit. Ed Davey is actually Michelle Barnier in disguise. And joining me now is the former Liberal Democrats MP, Norman Baker. Norman, always a pleasure. No secret that Ed Davey wants to rejoin the European Union, but he wants an all-inclusive, fully open border policy with every European Union member state for everybody under 30 immediately. That's precisely what we voted to stop in 2016.
Well, hang on, Martin. Good evening to you, first of all. I apologise for the ghoulish backdrop here. I'm in a hotel. Look, I think, listen to Ed's comments there. He was talking about getting back in the single market over a period of time and having the same access for under 30s as we presently offer to people from other parts of the world. So it doesn't seem to me to be terribly revolutionary. And let's go back to the Brexit vote. 52-48 was the margin, very narrow. And many of those who voted for Brexit voted for a softer Brexit, for us to continue in the single market, which after all was Margaret Thatcher's crowning achievement in terms of European policy. So I don't think he's been particularly radical in saying that. And you have to bear in mind, on the other hand, that Brexit has not been a success. You could argue whether it was flawed as a concept or flawed in delivery, but either way, it's not worked out very well. And therefore, to try to repair some of the damage seemed to me to be entirely in Britain's interest.
Yeah, Norman, a great way of repairing the damage would be to open our borders again to the under-30s, which wouldn't just be students. It'd be unskilled workers, it'd be baristas, bar staff, plumbers, factory workers, suppressing the working class wages of this country. Again, exactly what we voted to stop. And isn't that the point? The Liberal Democrats aren't very liberal, and you're not democratic. You'd like to overturn the democratic will of the nation and have a second referendum because you didn't get the result you wanted the first time.
Well, Martin, you're saying, you're putting in Ed's words, in Ed's mouth, things he hasn't said. He hasn't mentioned a second referendum. And believe me,
No,
you know me
he said
well
that's the
enough.
longer-term goal to get back in.
I am both liberal and democratic. We need a liberal party in this country for all sorts of reasons, not least of all because the government at the moment is not very liberal in its approach to a whole range of issues. So it's perfectly possible to create a situation where you have a deal for students without having a deal for everybody else. That's perfectly possible to create that. So let's not pretend that because he wants to have a deal with students, that somehow opens the floodgates to everything else. It doesn't.
Well, he said all under 30s. Anyway, I digress, because let's talk about another talking point that's come up at your conference, because elsewhere, eyebrows were raised when Israel was blamed for the October the 7th terror attacks during a fringe event on Sunday. Tayeb Ali, lawyer and the director of the International Centre of Justice for Palestinians, told party activists Israel's far-right dogma and actions in the West Bank led directly to Hamas's massacre of around 1,200 of Israelis almost a year ago. Now, the Liberal Democrats have been calling for an immediate ceasefire between Israel and Hamas since November, as well as urging the government to end all arms sales to Israel. Norman, these sort of people are not welcome in any political party, are they? How on earth can you blame far-right rhetoric from Israel for the Hamas terrorist invasion of October 7th? That happened at the Liberal Democrat conference. Presumably this guy's going to get booted out.
Well, look, I mean, first of all, we believe in freedom of speech in our party, and we're not intolerant, and we don't boot people out because of one thing they say.
Blaming Israel for a terrorist invasion isn't freedom of speech.
No,
that's something else.
It is, but we don't happen to agree with it. The majority line in the party, very clearly, is not that. The majority line in the party is to argue for a ceasefire, as indeed is mainstream, with Labour Party, with President Biden and many others, indeed the Conservative Party, I think. What is true, I think, and it's worth pointing out, is that the Israeli government is more to the right than any other Israeli government has ever been. And Netanyahu has an interest in maintaining the present conflict, because if it ends, he will find himself personally in trouble with the judiciary who are waiting to take action against him for alleged offences with Israel. Now, no one's saying, and I'm not saying, and I don't even know if Tariq Ali was saying, I wasn't there, that the Hamas attacks are justified. Of course they weren't justified. There can be no such justification for attacking individual citizens. But that applies both ways. Just as it was entirely wrong for the terrorist attack to deal with Israeli citizens who were entirely innocent, equally it's wrong for the Israeli government to start bombing areas where civilians have been told they can gather in safety. And that's what they're doing. And that's why the United Nations and others have condemned Israel for the way they're carrying out the reprisals.
OK, thank you very much for joining us on the show, Norman. Always a pleasure. And you must admit, we've all missed arguing about Brexit. Now, I'm joined back in the studio here by my panel of GBNews senior political commentator Nigel Nelson and, of course, Ammon Bogle, the chairman of the Global Britain Centre. Gents, let's have a quick chat, shall we, first about which topic would you prefer to talk to, Israel or Brexit?
Both.
Let's talk about Brexit then. Sure. It's OK to say that, oh, no, we don't really want to involve freedom of movement for all under 30s. I think that's what they do want, and they do want a second referendum, and they do want us to get back in the single market. They want to reverse Brexit.
Well, I'll be honest with you, Martin. I didn't actually know that the Liberal Democrat conference was going on at the minute. But if this is what they're coming out with, then, as you said earlier, they're neither Liberal nor Democratic. But I would probably argue that Sir David made a point to Christopher Hope earlier that we have freedom of movement for the under 30s with Japan. No, we don't. It's for 6,000 people per year. And those are young professionals, and it's vice versa. It's in exchange for the 6,000 young professionals from the UK who want to go to Japan for doing various various things. So it's not freedom of movement. But that's exactly what the Lib Dems want to encourage Starmer to do. Now, this is what Starmer said in 2020, that he would want to look at freedom of movement as the deal to get Brexit done. So he already has form for suggesting and wanting to campaign for freedom of movement with the EU, and that's exactly what he said in Germany, and that's exactly what he would do with the push from the Lib Dems. But more importantly, the freedom of movement for under-30s from the EU would also include the 2 million people who have received asylum in the EU. It's not just Europeans.
OK, Nigel Nelson now. Ed Davey might want freedom of movement. I'd like to be an astronaut. Probably neither of those two things are going to happen anytime soon because Ed Davey won't be in power. But the point alluded to there is actually Keir Starmer of the same mindset?
No. Brexit is done. It's over. People like me lost the argument, and we have to accept that. So we're talking about a different thing here. If you wanted to rejoin the single market, which is a Lib Dem policy, yes, you would need to have freedom of movement again. That is not what Keir Starmer is talking about. He's talking about a reset of relationships with Europe. On the youth mobility scheme, firstly, he's ruled it out. I'm in favour of it. It's not just Japan, Australia, Canada, New Zealand, Ecuador. The idea is an exchange of young people.
But there's no limit on them. There are millions and millions of under-30s across the 27 member states.
There would be limits.
From Singapore.
There would be, as Aman says, there would be a limit on the people who came here. They would get visas. They'd have to show they could support themselves. They wouldn't have access to public funds. Different thing completely. So freedom of movement, as far as I can see, is off the table because that would reverse Brexit.
Nigel, do you miss arguing about Brexit?
Oh, yeah, I loved arguing about Brexit.
Marvellous. Now, on the previous story there about Israel, we have a spokesman for the Liberal Democrats who gave us this statement. Like all party conferences, our fringe events include external speakers whose views do not reflect the party's policy. We've heard a range of views on all sides of this terrible conflict, including a speech on the conference floor from an Israeli peace activist who tragically lost his parents in the October the 7th terrorist attacks. The Liberal Democrats are clear that we want to see an immediate bilateral ceasefire to end the humanitarian disaster in Gaza, ensure the hostages are brought home and open the door to a two-state solution. So thank you very much to my panel. Now, up next, Jeremy Corbyn. Remember him? He's addressed a meeting for a new left-wing political party. We'll be speaking to a former Labour MP under Jeremy Corbyn for more details on that movement next.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
With record temperatures expected this week, how do zoos keep their cooler creatures cold? Well, at Yorkshire Wildlife Park, the polar bears are enjoying a vegetable ice block.
Polar bears, they do have quite a variety of different temperatures that they naturally do find. Once they're moving off these polar ice caps, they are in the likes of down in the areas of Canada, Hudson Bay. Naturally, they were finding polar bears in 35-degree temperatures year upon year. So they are very much used to warm temperatures and heat waves as such. What you'll tend to find is they'll go for a good swim and then go for a snooze in the shade thereafter.
Not wanting to miss out, the sea lions are treated to a huge fish lolly.
In the hot weather, it's really important to give them ice because these guys, they don't drink salt water. These pools are actually saltwater pools. They actually drink fresh water. They've got 2 freshwater pools in their house, but again, being able to provide that in their outside enclosure is also really important. So offering them ice with their fish is not only enriching, but it's actually beneficial to their welfare as well.
Other animals like the lemurs will be basking in the sun, but also cooling down with frozen sweet potato.
So we've got 3 different species of lemur here. They come in all different shapes, colours, sizes, but they are native to Madagascar. Madagascar can get quite hot, understandably, so throughout the cold months here in Yorkshire, we do give them a nice heated house all year round, but especially making sure it's nice and warm in the winter for them. And it does mean that in the hot spells as well that we're able to keep our eyes on them and try and give them things that make them a bit more comfortable with that incoming hot weather as well.
The frozen food on offer here certainly has the seal of approval on what could be the hottest day of the year.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Now, the former Labour leader, Jeremy Corbyn, has reportedly addressed a meeting for a new left-wing political party. The trigger for this new initiative was the large number of independent pro-Palestine campaigns at the July general election that did well. In fact, if you recall, in total 5 pro-Gaza independents, including Mr Corbyn, won a seat in Parliament, with many more coming in second place. Now, their wins have been seen as the beginning of a potential new left-wing mass movement to act as a counterweight to Labour's supposed rightward drift and, of course, the rise of Reform UK. So, does the UK need a new left-wing party? Is the Labour Party really moving to the right? Or is this potentially a sign of sectarian politics on the move? Now, that's a lot to discuss, and joining me is a man with a big opinion. It's a former Labour MP, Lloyd Russell Moyle. Lloyd, welcome to the show. Always a pleasure. So, you're a former Corbynist, so you must be delighted that your old boss has once again hove back into view.
Well, I'm not sure that they have agreed to set up a party yet, and my understanding is that they have not included the independent pro-Palestine MPs. But this is an initiative from left-wing trade unionists based around Jeremy Corbyn's Peace and Justice Project, which is the project that he set up after he left being leader of the Labour Party and then was expelled from the party. We will see. I am always very sceptical of new parties being established, and I think that the left of the political spectrum is pretty crowded. The Lib Dem seem to be inhabiting a kind of centre-left area. The Greens clearly are inhabiting a left of centre bloc, and they have just launched a new left-wing campaign within their party. And so I do think it seems a little bit like crowding the field, which will be good for the right, as it were. We saw the reform effect, didn't we, on the Conservatives this time round. And of course, there could be a similar effect on Labour if there was a left-wing flank. I suspect that will be the Green Party, however, and not a new venture. New ventures have been tried before, Tusk, the Trade Union Socialist Coalition, and they weren't very successful.
Now, Lloyd, of course, Mr Corbyn brings a certain amount of baggage to the table, let's be frank. Corbyn's Labour Party was the only political party ever to be investigated officially for racism, apart from the BNP. And the kind of people he's been jumping into bed with recently: Shokab Adnan, Leicester South; Ayab Khan, Birmingham; Perry Barr, Adnan Hussain, Blackburn; Iqbal Mohammed in Dewsbury and Batley, all said they won that election for Gaza, especially Iqbal Mohammed in Dewsbury and Batley, the Batley Grammar School teacher, still in hiding 3 years later. Not a peep out of Mr Mohammed about one of his constituents. Is that the danger? Corbyn will just give a guise to a new political movement solely along sectarian, divisive politics. Precisely what Nigel Farage said would happen.
Well, I think, as I said, what's interesting is that this initiative that he has spoken at didn't include the Palestinian independence. He's formed a separate alliance with them working in Parliament, but hasn't included them in this meeting today, according to reports. So that would maybe indicate that he wants a broader, bigger coalition. I, however, do think we've got to be careful not to condemn elected people that got elected by the people in their constituencies, and to somehow suggest that those people in those constituencies are somehow wrong for voting. That's what people accuse Reform voters of as well, and it's distasteful. I think it's distasteful on all sides. You can disagree with some of their views, but I think it is difficult to just dismiss them entirely. They are, of course, members of Parliament.
OK, now, very quickly, Lloyd, is this a party that you'd be interested in joining if you're asked?
Well, I am still interested in working within the Labour Party, and I have a process to do that within. But look, my view has always been that I want to work with parties that have a strong trade union and cooperative link. I'm sceptical of just state power. I'm sceptical of big business. I want trade unions and I want cooperatives running the show. And at the moment, the trade unions and cooperatives have the link with the Labour Party. So that's where I'll be staying for the time being, of course.
Answered like a true politician there. Beautiful. Thank you very much, Lloyd Russell-Moyle. Always a pleasure to have you on the show. Thanks, Lloyd. Now, still joined in the studio by my panel. Of course, that's GB News' senior political commentator, Nigel Nelson, and Aman Bogle, the chairman of the Global Britain Centre. And hoving interview, of course, is Jacob Rees-Mogg, State of the Nation. Next, chaps, a quick blast from you. Let's start with you, Aman. Corbyn, the return. He's back. Good idea or bad?
Well, look, I'm a Democrat, yes. Go ahead and set up a political party, but make sure it's authentic. Call it the Marxist Party of Great Britain, brackets, Friends of Hamas and Hezbollah.
Well, that's very succinct and to the point. Nigel?
Yeah, I think it's going to be called the Collective. But anyway, like all small parties like this, the chance of it surviving beyond its fledgling years is very remote. Who remembers Change UK now? But they were a party in Parliament. They had a number of MPs, disappeared almost immediately.
I think even the people in Change UK have forgotten about Change UK, to be honest.
Most of them have disappeared too.
Let's bring you in now, Jacob Rees-Mogg, before we get into what's on State of the Nation tonight. What about the return of Corbyn? Is there really room for a far-left party with a motley collection of followers that Corbyn may attract?
Jeremy Corbyn was amazingly popular at the peak of his popularity amongst young people. And at least he obviously pays for his own suits. He doesn't need to get them funded by donors.
A neat segue into what's on State of the Nation.
Which is exactly what I'm going to be talking about, this scandal. And the thing is that party leaders take donations. But Starmer was so outraged about Boris getting money from donors, and now he can't even afford to buy his wife a frock. He has to get it paid for by a peer of the realm who clearly, obviously, has no vested interest in sending bungs to the Labour Party.
I love the word frock, especially when used in such a beautiful way by you. Quickly, Starmer is in Italy. Do you think he'll come back with any sort of idea of strengthening our borders, or is it just all performative globe-trotting?
Well, I'm also going to be talking about that, because he's going to talk about processing offshore, but then anyone who meets the processing requirements will be given asylum in the UK. And the people from Syria and Afghanistan are getting asylum at a 90% plus rate. So they'll all come here anyway.
Super stuff. Jacob Rees-Mogg, State of the Nation, up next straight after the show. Always excellent. Thank you very much, Aman Bogle and Nigel Nelson, for your contribution. We had a Navy SEAL on tonight. I've thoroughly enjoyed that. Hope you've enjoyed the show. Now, I'll be back tomorrow, 3 till 6 p.m. And up next, of course, is Jacob Rees-Mogg. He'll be getting stuck into frocks. Not literally, figuratively. That's going up next. Thanks. I'll see you tomorrow, 3 till 6.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hi there, welcome to the latest forecast from the Met Office for GB News. It was missing throughout much of the summer, but higher pressure has now arrived. There will be some cloud in places, but for most it's clear spells through the night and during the next few days. Under this higher pressure that's centred over the UK, that's pushed a cold front south. But another weak front will move into the far northwest overnight. That's going to bring some thicker and lower clouds, so fairly murky and damp in places. Lewis Harris sky, as well as Shetland, seeing some light and patchy outbreaks of rain. Elsewhere, clear skies. Under those clear skies, temperatures falling 2 to 4 Celsius in some sheltered spots across central and southern UK. A few mist and fog patches first thing. They're not going to last soon enough. Clear skies and sunshine return across the UK. That is, except for the Northern Isles and the far north and northwest of Scotland, where it will be a grey, misty and damp start in places. Best of the sunshine across Scotland, we'd be through the central belt at eastern Scotland, and Northern Ireland seeing some decent sunny spells. But for much of southern Scotland, England and Wales, It's blue skies from the word go, and that's how it remains effectively throughout much of the day. Some patchy cloud, most likely across East Anglia and the southeast. Kent seeing a fair amount of cloud moving in. But for the north and northwest of Scotland, the cloud actually thins and it turns brighter into the afternoon and warmer as a result. Northeast Scotland, low to mid-20s, low to mid-20s further south in places as well. And it's another fine start to Wednesday. The best of the sunshine on Wednesday morning will be in the far